This is the Sean Hannity Show podcast.
All right, here we are, T-minus, less than 4 hours now till a scheduled vote on the health care bill, repeal and replace. That's going to be our top story today. Chucky Schumer promising a filibuster. What a shock. I can tell you right now, the nuclear option will be used because it must be used because Republicans are, in good faith, they say yes to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They know she's a left-wing radical activist that doesn't believe in separation of powers, co-equal branches of government. She's a judicial activist, believes in legislating from the bench. Same with Sonia Sotomayor. Same with Elena Kagan. Same with all of them on the left. It's now a 4-4 vote. So if the Republicans are not going to get the reciprocity that they give the Democrats, what's the point any longer? It's a facade. They're playing by a different set of rules. There is no intelligent reason at all to oppose Neil Gorsuch. All right, we'll get to that as the program unfolds today. Also, we have more on this blockbuster revelation by Devin Nunes. What's fascinating about it is the left's reaction. They can't handle it. They're angry. And the media, the same thing, because they've all been wrong for the longest time. And once again, Donald Trump turns out to be right. Okay, he said wiretapping. He didn't say surveillance. Okay, you got him. Is wiretapping surveillance? Does surveillance include other issues? Yeah, it does. Yeah. And if you're looking at the Trump server and you have our government recording phone conversations of the president-elect and his transition team and others, and whether or not it's done for legitimate reasons, I don't know. It should bother every American that believes in the right to privacy, that believes that the government should not be involved in unreasonable search and seizure, that believes in warrants being obtained before such listening, monitoring happens. Now, if it does happen as a matter of course for the intelligence community, well, we do have protections known as minimization. We do have protections. You're not supposed to identify the person that is the American that you don't have the right to surveil, and you're certainly not allowed to leak the information. All right, so we'll get to all of that today. We've identified the London attacker. You know what's sad about this whole thing? So here it is, all yesterday, all over the news. It's basically nowhere today. Linda and I were talking about this. This has become a new normal that we ought not be accepting. The first Muslim mayor of London ought not have stated this is the new normal, and that if you live in a big city, you're going to have to expect things like this to happen. It doesn't have to be that way. And we have real hard soul searching to do in this country about whether or not we are going to learn the mistakes of France and Great Britain and Germany and Belgium and all of Europe, the Islamization of Europe, and whether or not vetting refugees is at least a minor defense against inviting those with radical extremist views into the country, which is a privilege and it's not a right. Might want to inform some of these judges on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. You might want to inform some of these judges when they go out judge shopping. Anyway, we'll get to all of this in the course of the program today. I want to start with where we are with the health care bill. So we're less than, about 3 hours and 50 minutes away from a scheduled vote tonight. And as of right now, I can tell you where we are. We don't have the votes. The president, Republicans do not have the votes to pass this bill. And it probably, if I had to guess, probably in light of recent developments that I'll explain to you, probably you're going to get the vote to move forward. Now, one of the problems is, at the end of the day, what is health care going to look like in America? Well, this bill's not going to tell you that. This bill, there's all sorts of, some real and some imagined problems when you need 51 votes in the Senate, reconciliation, the issue of cloture, the issue of, all of the Byrd rule, the issue of all of these things, which I'll get to in a second. That's all process and legitimate obstacles to any bill that you're going to have. And the Health and Human Services Secretary hopefully can explain all of this to us. As we speak, I can tell you I know the following is true, that the Freedom Caucus is meeting alone, together, and they're making a decision probably right now. They have spoken to the president numerous times today. The president has said to them that, again, this now has come out of the Rules Committee. The bill at this point is not going to change. There's no amendment to the rule that's going to be added to the bill that's going to be added at this late hour. I'm giving you all my inside sources. I've been working the phones all day here today. And I talked to many people in the White House, talked to many people in the Freedom Caucus. Exactly what are the obstacles? Where are we? What's happening? When will we know if this is going to get done? But as of right now, and it's, 3 hours and 48 minutes away from a scheduled vote, they don't have the votes to pass the bill. That I know for a fact. At this very minute, the Freedom Caucus is uniting, and they're now trying to make a decision. What they have asked for is an ironclad promise from the president that the things that they have been requesting and have been shut out of the process from the beginning about, that the president says will happen in the final version of the bill. Because remember, this, as Tom Price said, this is a 3-phase process for the bill. That's why I can't sit here, and anyone that says they can sit here on air and tell you everything that's ultimately going to be in this bill, that's not how sausage is made or legislation happens. And Tom Price said that full repeal of Obamacare will happen, meaning the actual repeal of the parts that matter and put vulnerable people at risk. And he said what that does is place, at the end of the day, free markets are the answer to this whole problem to begin with. But let me start backwards and work from there. Before they ever let this bill out, this is where the problem began. Before they ever rolled out this bill, they never consulted with some of the best, brightest, and I'm talking about Congress, because, for 8 long years, we've heard repeal and replace, repeal and replace, repeal and replace. One of my biggest criticisms is, they voted to repeal Obamacare 50 times. Even President Obama started making fun of it because they wanted to go home to their districts and they wanted to be able to say they voted for repeal. I'm being very real here now. They were not votes to really repeal it. They were show votes. They were votes to be able to go home to their districts and say they voted to repeal Obamacare. And they did. In fact, they did. But it had no meaning because it never was going anywhere. Now, one of the reasons Ted Cruz in 2013, when he went to filibuster, Ted Cruz was trying to get Congress to use their enumerated power of the purse to stop funding Obamacare as a means of actually putting some teeth into what it is that they're promising. And then, of course, he was ostracized, and there were predictions that, the Republicans will lose the Senate and won't win the Senate in 2014, and none of that came true. It was a banner year in 2014, and Ted Cruz rose to the point where he was probably the most popular senator in Washington, D.C. for taking that stand and being willing to use the power of the purse. Now, there's 2 different factions that are opposing the bill. This is a real challenge for the president, a real challenge for the speaker. You have moderates in districts that Hillary Clinton won, but the Republican won a House seat. There's about 20 some odd members in that category. Then you have the Freedom Caucus, which has anywhere between 31 and 40 votes strong, and they're pledging to unite together, whichever way they end up coming out of this meeting today. I have to assume that they're probably going to be united. And the problem began at the very beginning. And you know what? I don't really care what the moderates have to say, because as far as I'm concerned, they're just thinking about themselves. They're thinking about their reelection. They're just worried that Hillary won their district. Well, what's more important, the future of the country, getting this right, or their reelection? I'm really not sympathetic to the idea that they need to get reelected or anybody needs to get reelected, because their job is to serve the American people. So, I'm sure there are things that you can offer moderates. They're not organized like the Freedom Caucus. You could probably say, okay, well, we'll go campaign for you, or we'll run ads in your district. The same type of garbage insider horse trading that goes on every day. But the more important issue here is whatever happens today and tonight, this can't happen anymore. They had 8 long years, and they never consulted with Heritage Action. Heritage Action's been against us when it was laid out. Or the Cato Institute. That's where Patient Power was written, Musgrave and Goodman. That talked about healthcare savings accounts, which is a part of this bill. But they were not consulted. Americans for Prosperity were not consulted. Their approval was not given. Same with the Club for Growth. They're smart people at all these places. Freedom Works, same thing. Then the study group, which is a more moderately conservative group, but full of good conservatives like Marsha Blackburn, they had to be sold on the bill. And certain promises, I guess, were made to them. Now, I know for a fact that Paul Ryan, up until just the last 48 hours, hadn't talked to the Freedom Caucus, the conservative bloc that is the biggest threat to this bill, in over 3 weeks. Now, that to me is unforgivable. They didn't consult them in the beginning. They didn't consult them during the process. They were told at different points this is going to be a binary take it or leave it bill. You don't get any input. You don't get to make amendments. And they were treated horribly, in my opinion. Not by the president, by the way. They'll tell you the president has reached out again and again and again, and using every negotiating skill that he has to try and get this done. And then to hear over and over again, we're going to lose moderates. Well, you're giving moderates too much power. That's not Donald Trump's base. And by the way, they were left in the dark too. Nobody knew what was in the bill until they finally rolled it out. And everything they thought was in there, that they suspected that was in there, that they were going to pose that was in there, ended up being in there. And what's so frustrating about it, they had 8 years to prepare for this moment. They look like the gang that can't shoot straight. It's so pathetic to watch this. The intramural fighting that's been going on TV. It looks like they're not prepared to lead. They could have had a consensus bill. They could have fought this out before the rollout. They could have fixed this in a way that would have, it's never going to be perfect. It's just not, because people have different agendas. And now they put the president in the position. He's got to do all the heavy lifting. And if the bill doesn't work out, he's going to own what they did. So he's not in an enviable position here. Now they're going to move forward with budget bills, tax reform bills. If they handle it the same way, they're just going to double down on stupid. And they're going to continue to look like the gang that can't shoot straight, that is not prepared to lead in any way. And I say before any rollout, maybe you can check in with these smart groups like Heritage, Cato, AFP, and the Club for Growth. Maybe you can talk to the conservative caucus. Maybe you can talk to the study group. Maybe you could talk to innovative healthcare providers like Josh Umber, Dr. Umber of Atlas MD, like we've been putting on the program. Maybe you can talk to people that understand tax reform and the implications if you drop the corporate rate to 15, 16, 17%. Then you can have all these agreements in principle. You work it out behind closed doors, and then you roll it out as a team that's united, and you claim the win. Now it's come down to a last minute, I don't have a clue what's going to happen. Now, you can put Senate and House members on the same page. You can do there's so many things that you can do differently here. I've told you I'm holding these guys accountable. That's what I'm doing. They've screwed it up. Doesn't mean it's not going to work out the right way, but it means they've screwed up the process and they look stupid. Anyway, we'll get back to this in a minute. It's our top story. We'll be following it all day. The Health and Human Services Secretary, Tom Price, is here. We have Freedom Caucus members coming up in the course of the program. We are going to get into the Devin Nunes revelations and also much, much more as we continue. All right.
Hannity Headline, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you everywhere you go. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
Now, why am I going back to the process here? Because, you know something, there's a better way to govern. There's a better way to serve your constituents than rolling out a bill that nobody's seen, that you know is going to be opposed, that results in intramural squabbling all over TV and radio, and having had 8 years to do it, it's almost so unforgivable to me, and it's inexplicable. I can't justify or explain why anybody would ever do anything in such a manner. Now, part of me wants to rant and rave and be angry, but that's not going to help anything. I'm trying to offer practical solutions and a roadmap to success, with the goal being that we have the best plan that best serves the American people, which is why I keep putting on Dr. Umber, Atlas MD, $50 a month, unlimited care, concierge care for every adult, man and woman. And that means everything. 95% reductions as it relates to x-rays and MRIs and pharmaceuticals. He takes care of everything in the office. Kids are $10 a month. They've duplicated that nearly 1,000 times around the country. It offers care. You have 24-hour service. You have a good doctor who also has created an incredible business model. Any real solution to healthcare is going to be rooted in the free market. Healthcare savings accounts, particularly, look, I'm older now, but if I was 25, 30, 18, and I could start a healthcare savings account and put tax-deductible money in there all year, every single working year of my life, and build up, get my checkup once a year, once every 2 years. You know, it'll pay for my colonoscopy if I need that. But then when I really need health care, it's there for me, and then I can choose my doctor, my hospital that I prefer. And then you add catastrophic care for bad accidents, cancer, heart attacks, anything that's prohibitively expensive. You know what? It's the perfect solution. It's free market, and supply and demand crisscross equal price. The insurance companies with the best plans at the lowest price will get your business. Simple.
We know you never want to miss the Sean Hannity Show. And now you never have to. Just sign up for Hannity Headlines, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you on your laptop, your mobile phone, everywhere you go, even to your liberal in-laws' place in Vermont.
Yeah.
And after a few hours of that, you'll be glad you brought Sean along. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. It looks like the healthcare vote is not going to take place tonight. I've been getting mixed messages all throughout this hour, and I didn't want to bring it up until, let's see, Jamie Dupree. Let's see, he was outside the Freedom Caucus meeting. Hard to see a vote tonight, but anything remains possible, he says. I think I actually agree with Jamie. I think there's still a slight outside chance, although both Fox News and CNN are saying no vote tonight on the health care bill. Mike Emanuel just sent me a note. The House currently stands in recess. Members are advised that procedural votes are expected in the House this evening at roughly 8 p.m. Members are further advised that votes are now expected tomorrow. Okay, so I'm guessing that they're just pushing this off. Look, I want to make sure, am I making this clear what I'm saying, Linda? Because this is more complicated than I think people understand. I want to be very clear what I'm trying to explain to you here, because there's a part of me that's really, really angry. Because it didn't have to look like this, and it didn't have to be like this. You know, and by the way, I like the Freedom Caucus. We've had these guys on for a reason, because these guys are the most conservative in the House. And these guys are principled conservatives. And these guys were left out of the process. And so at the last hour, when they need their votes, because they're saying, well, we need these things to be able to go back to our homes and tell our constituents that we kept our word and we did what we said we're going to do, well, they should have been consulted in the beginning. So, you know, and I really don't care about moderate Republicans that are in districts that Hillary Clinton won, because it sounds to me like they want to keep Obamacare. And Obamacare Light is not the answer. Their districts didn't vote for the president. That's not the people that support the president here. So anyway, late last night, just to give you a timeline of what happened, and we had Mark Meadows on the program last night. He had a private meeting with the president, and he struck a deal in principle with the president. And then it turns out that they had to walk back part of the deal. And I'm told two different stories here. One is because reconciliation, that process got in the way of what the deal was. And then I was told later this afternoon, well, they can't because the Rules Committee couldn't meet again. The Rules Committee work was done. And it turns out, well, now if they have more time, the Rules Committee can get back in session and they can work on the adjustments and the changes that is going to make this bill more free market, that is more in line with the promises that the president makes and that the congressmen have made to their constituents. I don't really care about the time. If you get it done today, tomorrow, next week, next month, it really doesn't matter as long as you get it done right, because at the end of the day, getting it right is what matters. Now, I've got to explain things to some of you. For example, a lot of you don't know that Obamacare was passed through a process that is known as reconciliation. Now, that was a process, if you want the history of it, it was established in the Congressional Budget Act of 1974. And what it basically means is Congress changes existing laws to conform tax and spending levels to the levels set in a budget resolution, and changes recommended by committees pursuant to a reconciliation instruction are incorporated into a reconciliation measure. Now, the problem with this is you're not supposed to. It's not designed to pass major pieces of legislation. Remember, Scott Brown was supposed to be the vote against that would have killed Obamacare. But then rather than use the normal process of passing a bill, well, Obama did what he always does, makes new rules up as he goes, and they passed the health care bill by reconciliation. And in other words, directing one or more committees to report or submit to the Budget Committee legislation that changes existing law in order to bring spending and revenues or the debt limit into conformity with the budget resolution. So it's basically a budget bill, and it specifies which committees to which they apply, and it indicates the appropriate dollar changes. But the problem is what you do is they try to push legislation through it, and then it's got certain procedural difficulties. It's a real problem, and that's having only 52 Republican senators represents a challenge in the Senate. So they're not just thinking about the House vote here, they're thinking about the Senate vote. And then you got the Byrd Rule, which is a rule in the Senate that amends the Budget Act to allow senators during the reconciliation process to block a piece of legislation if it purports significantly to increase the federal deficit beyond a 10-year term or in extraneous ways as set forth in the Budget Act. So that's a consideration, again, when you get to the Senate. The Senate was supposed to start on health care next week. Then you have cloture. What's cloture? If you hear these words being thrown around, cloture is the only procedure by which the Senate can vote to place a time limit on consideration. In other words, you need 60 votes. In other words, to overcome a filibuster. And under the cloture rule, the Senate may limit consideration of a pending matter to 30 additional hours, but only by a vote of 3/5 of the full Senate, which is 60 votes. Now, for example, Chuck Schumer is threatening to filibuster. And if they don't invoke the nuclear option, then they would otherwise need 60 votes to have an up or down straight vote for Neil Gorsuch. Listen, I'm not trying to drag you into the weeds here. I'm just not. Anyway, so they're now reporting that there won't be a vote tonight, but they will be available for some votes, procedural votes, I guess, at 8 o'clock tonight. So I guess by the time we're on the air tonight, things will be rocking and rolling there in some way, shape, matter, or form. But the problem is this, and I want to be really clear. After 8 long years of saying repeal and replace, and this is where I really want to rant, but it's not going to be helpful. After 8 long years, for them to follow the role, and this is the legislative branch. Remember, I promised to all of you that I'm going to be an honest broker, that we're holding them accountable. And we can't hold them accountable on this healthcare disaster, really, at this point, unless we go back and understand where the mistakes were made. So I'm trying to explain that to you. So when you're going to roll out a bill, but you haven't spoken with the Freedom Caucus, and by the way, there were Republicans that went against Reagan in the early 80s. Remember, Reagan gave us tax cuts, and then he wanted an adjustment to raise taxes. There were many Republicans on principle that said no. When George Herbert Walker Bush wanted to break his no new tax pledge, guys like Newt Gingrich said no. And he was forever hated by George H.W. Bush thereafter. And remember, the Democrats pushed, and he said he wouldn't do it, and he did it. It ended up costing him re-election and giving us Bill Clinton. When you make a promise, promise matters. But what a better way to have handled this would have been, instead of doing this secretively and excluding Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, Americans for Prosperity, the Club for Growth, the Republican Study Group, the Freedom Caucus Group, and even the moderates, to be fair, they should have all been consulted, and they should have built a want list, and they should have put in the list everything every group needed to pass it. Everybody's not going to get everything they want, but it should have been known, and it should have been negotiated behind closed doors, and the bill should have been drafted with the consensus of trying to get as many Republicans on board as possible, but also provide the best bill for the American people. And so it ends up being a bill not supported by any of the major conservative libertarian think tanks, a bill that is not supported by the most conservative groups in Congress. Certain changes were made last minute. I think the moderates were wielding way too much power in this process. When a bill is immediately labeled Obamacare light, that's a problem. Watching Republicans after 8 years have a public intramural fight on TV, I thought it looked horrible. To me, it looked like they weren't prepared to lead. They had 8 years to prepare for this moment. Every influential conservative radio host, the president's speaking. Let's listen.
Let's listen.
First of all, I want to thank you for your support on health care. That's been great. I know you had a big problem with Obamacare, and everybody does, so welcome to the crowd. But I very much appreciate you being here, and I very much appreciate your support. I'm honored to welcome all of the many truckers and the trucking industry leaders to the White House. And I must say, really, you are the leaders. You are the big ones. I'm very impressed that I was able to get you. I think it was the White House that was able to get you. No one knows America like truckers know America. You see it every day, and you see every hill, and you see every valley, and you see every pothole in our roads that have to be redone, right? Every town, every forest, from border to ocean to ocean. It's true. It's true. And you love America, and you love the spirit, and we love your spirit, and we want to thank you very much, because very special people. Through day and night and all kinds of weather, truckers course the arteries of our nation's highways. You carry anything and everything, the food that stocks our shelves, the fuel that runs our cars, and the steel that builds our cities. You think I wrote that? It's not bad. Save that. I would have saved that paragraph for a book. But America depends on you. And you work very hard for America. Many of you spend weeks away from your families doing what can sometimes be a very difficult and dangerous job, to put it mildly. But you take care of yourselves, you look out for your friends, and you don't stop until the job is done. That's true. Obamacare has inflicted great pain on American truckers.
So
many of you were forced.
We brought you the beginning of that tape playback because we wanted you to hear that the president.
All right, there's Shep Smith. All right, so not really a whole lot on this. So look, there's a way to fix it, and I'm offering solutions. There's been as I said, as somebody that is now, I've done so many deep dives into alternatives that work, like Dr. Umber, Atlas MD, and concierge care at $50 a month for adult, $10 for children, unlimited care, unlimited access, 90% reductions, 95% reductions in pharmaceuticals and stitches, and that's all included in broken bones and MRIs and X-rays. And it's pretty amazing new developments. Now, I think at the end of the day, we'll get there. I'm hopeful, because so many people are now becoming aware of it because we just keep hammering it and bringing it home. But something, I will say that, as we move forward fixing this bill, and then the budget bills, and then the tax reforms bills, I'd say before maybe we can learn something and not handle it this way, because that would be doubling down on stupid, in my opinion. And before any rollout, hang on, I can't hear. What?
POTUS is now going to talk about health care.
All right, the president's now. Let's listen to the president.
Insurance on the Obamacare exchanges, you experienced a crippling rise in premiums. and a dramatic loss in options. And you just take a look at what's happened to the costs, and it's incredible. You look at what's going on with deductibles, where they're through the roof. So essentially you don't have it, because hopefully you'll never have to use it, because you won't have that kind of injury or sickness. So you know the problems. And it's put a lot of the trucking businesses out of business, which is pretty tough. In addition, many union drivers are slated to have their plans taxed to pay Obamacare, and they've been against it for a long period of time. And trucking companies that are considered large employers have to offer government-mandated health insurance. You have the mandate that just doesn't work for them. You're forced to do things that you don't want to do. Today, the House is voting to repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a very close vote. After we repeal and replace Obamacare, and by the way, it's close not because Obamacare is good, it's close for politics. They know it's no good. Everybody knows it's no good. It's only politics, because we have a great bill, and I think we have a very good chance, but it's only politics. After we repeal and replace Obamacare, we're going to do everything we can to make sure truckers stay busy moving American goods made by American companies and workers. Big difference out there now, don't you think? Yeah. Big difference. We will rewrite our broken tax code and fix our terrible trade deals. We will also eliminate job-killing regulations.
All right, the president's moving off health care, so let me just go here and just say that it looks like the vote is going to take place tomorrow. I think I understand why, and that is that the final wording, it might go back to the Rules Committee, and or the letter from Tom Price, who's going to join us at the top of the hour, that is going to the Freedom Caucus. By the way, the Freedom Caucus, I think, is in the great tradition of really, those Republicans that opposed Reagan or George W. or Herbert Walker Bush when he was breaking his no new tax pledge. That's the way it's made. And for those of you that think this is a bad thing, you're wrong. This is actually a good thing. But there's lessons certainly to be learned here. And hopefully they will learn them. All right, 800-941-SEAN.
This is the Sean Hannity Show podcast.
So here's what I'd like to ask you all to do, is give it up for our law enforcement officers and say thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, so here we are tonight. Continuing to debate this in good faith, not only with our own conference, but certainly with the president engaged. We have not gotten enough of our members to get to yes at this point under what we're currently considering. However, I would say progress is being made, and that progress that is being made is really should be applauded with the efforts of the White House to try to not only deliver on a campaign promise, but to deliver lower premiums for every American from coast to coast and in between. And so I would say that at this point, the president's engagement is unparalleled in, I believe, in the history of our country to actually engage a number of members, whether they be moderates or conservatives, and I think it's indicative of just a president that wants to solve problems, even meeting with somebody like Elijah Cummings on prescription drug actual cost and price. I mean, what he said today in the meeting was he singled out Elijah Cummings and said he wants to work on an issue for a Democrat. This is a president that wants to get things done. And so I can tell you the Freedom Caucus is committed to working with the president to get this done. This artificial deadline that we have at this particular point of a vote tonight actually is something that we imposed on ourselves. And so I'm very encouraged and optimistic that if we continue to work together, and by that we plan to reach out to some of the members of the Tuesday group to have some real discussions on how we can come together and have consensus, realizing there's different motivations for different members of our conference. And so,
aren't you handing the president a loss?
What's the procedure now going forward to try to, wherever the discussion takes place, what's on the table?
I think the procedures for going forward are still fundamental, and they have not changed for the last couple of weeks. If we can make sure that there is an adequate safety net, that pre-existing conditions are taken care of, where truly premiums start to go down for moms and dads, that's what it's all about. And I can tell you that that's what I heard over and over again was, does this bill actually lower premiums significantly enough to make a real difference for people that are struggling to pay for health care? And I think that we have that at the very core of where we are.
And you're still not moved by the conventional wisdom that there's a DOA in the Senate?
I've been having a number of discussions with my Senate colleagues, both some that are considered to be very conservative and some that are considered to be not as quite conservative. And I'm optimistic that we can find common ground with at least 51 or 52 senators in that way. I would be hopeful. Well, I won't even go there. We'll just say 51 or 52 senators.
Ms. Rose, what specifically did the White House put on the table that could get you to yes?
You know, really right now, in terms of talking about specifics of negotiations, I'm not going to do that. I can tell you, and I know that that's what everybody wants to hear, is what would get you here. What we've communicated that very effectively with the president and his staff. But it's really not about what I want. It's about what those constituents want back home. And so in doing that, we started reviewing some of the text that the administration and our leadership has put forth. There were a number of questions in terms of what it did.
All right, let me just step in here because we have the Health and Human Services Secretary, Dr. Tom Price, on with us right now. I'm sorry to keep you, Mr. Secretary. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Sean. Wonderful to be with you.
All right, so the vote's pushed off to tomorrow. It seems like it's close. It seems like there are a few loose ends that need to be tied up. As I understood it, some of it was resolved earlier today, and there was going to be a letter that was given to the Freedom Caucus from you, signed by the president, a promise. Where are we with that?
Well, we're in the process of making certain that we get a bill and that we get a plan in place, not just this piece of legislation, but the kinds of things that we're able to do at the department, and then further legislation after that that will solve the problem of increasing premium costs and lack of access to care that so many Americans see. So we're working through that with all members of the conference in the House of Representatives, and the president and I are optimistic and enthusiastic about the likelihood of this moving forward.
All right, let's talk about their very specific concerns and the things that you just heard from Congressman Mark Meadows. They have a voting block of anywhere between 30 and 40 members, and they are fighting for specific things. I understand that both the president, Mark Meadows, had a deal last night, and certain aspects of that deal were not doable because of the reconciliation issues that the Senate faces. So it was a little bit back to the drawing board, that there was a meeting today, that the president got a lot of applause. You know, one of the things I know they're talking about is the Title I mandates, and dropping all of those things. Where do you think you need to go, and what areas need to be worked on to make this happen?
Well, I think what folks need is simply a confidence that we'll be able to, as an administration, given the passage of this bill and then the activities that we can do from an administrative standpoint, that we are going to get those done so that the premium costs come down and deductibles come down and people are able to have the kind of coverage that they want for themselves and their families, not that the government forces them to buy. And some of those things are the essential health benefits that are stipulated in the current law in Obamacare that make the cost of coverage to be so much greater than it otherwise ought to be, and make it so that many individuals out there have an insurance card, but they aren't getting the care that they need. And so that's one area. There are other areas about whether or not third parties ought to pay premiums, the kinds of things that the Department of Health and Human Services is able to look at in a constitutional, a legal, a methodical, and logical way, pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act, so that the American people are able to look at what we're proposing, have an opportunity to comment, have us respond and reply to those comments, and then move forward with these rules changes.
Let me ask you specifically. Go ahead, sir. I don't want to interrupt you.
What so many people remember are all of the literally hundreds of rules and regulations that came forward from the previous administration. And we're going to look at every single one of them, as I think I told you before. 1,442 times in the previous legislation, in the ACA or the Obamacare legislation, 1,442 times it said the Secretary shall or the Secretary may. And we're going to look at every one of the items that were actions that were taken pursuant to those clauses and say, did they help patients or harm patients? If they harm patients, then we're going to do our best to get rid of them.
Look, neither the 2015 bill or because of reconciliation does this bill fully repeal it. I mean, and there are procedural difficulties to get that, and that's been a big criticism of a lot of people. And then, then we've got a three-phase process. And you're right, the 1,442 times the Secretary shall, the Secretary may. There's an awful lot of discretion in there. And I guess talking to members and even some moderates and conservatives and Freedom Caucus people and study people, I guess that you can't give a full answer right now because you have two other steps beyond tomorrow, assuming this bill passes, before we ever really get a full glimpse of what this is going to mean for the American people. Is that fair?
Well, the full glimpse that we can give is just take a look at the hundreds of regulations and literally the thousands of guidance letters that were put out that oftentimes have the authority and the power of a rule and say this is what we're going to look at and, again, determine whether it harms patients or helps patients, whether it drives up costs or drives down costs. And if it helps patients and drives down costs, then we ought to keep it. But the vast majority of them harm patients and drive up costs, and we ought to do something about that. But the process, the legal constitutional process that we must go through appropriately is defined by the Administrative Procedures Act, and that means that we have to publicize the intent of the department, give a period of time for the American people and interested parties to make comment, take in those comments in sincerity and objectively and determine whether or not they help the proposal that was put forward, and then come forward with the decision. So it's a process that has to occur. We can't game that system and say this is exactly what we're going to do because that's not what the process and the law provides.
Can you explain to my audience what the three beyond, the 1,442 instances where the Secretary shall have the ability, the Secretary may make changes. Can you explain the three-step process so people understand it better?
Well, the process is just that you look at the rules and the regulations.
Well, let's start with the legislation. That's step one, correct?
This is the reconciliation legislation that's going through the Congress right now. And this is the reason that this is important is because it only requires a simple majority vote in the United States Senate of 51. It doesn't require the 60 votes that most policy does that comes to the Senate floor.
Phase two.
Because of that, there are certain constraints that they can't put in that because of the rules of the Budget Act that was adopted in 1974. Phase two are those things that we are doing at the Department of Health and Human Services right now and will continue to do until we've exhausted all of the things that harm patients and drive up costs. Those are the rules and regulations and literally thousands of guidance letters that were put in place by the previous administration. And then phase three are the legislative things, the things that need to change law that require 60 votes in the United States Senate and therefore have to be done in a different manner. And some of those have already passed. For example, the McCarran-Ferguson repeal yesterday or the day before passed in the House of Representatives 416 or 417 to 2 or something like that. So many of these enjoy significant bipartisan support, but they can't be put in this initial piece of legislation because of the rules. So
what are you going to do now that you still have the Freedom Caucus guys that have enough votes to stop this bill from passing? What are you going to do between now and tomorrow morning to get this rolling?
Well, it's not just the Freedom Caucus folks. It's other members of the conference, the Tuesday group and the like, who when you push one one place, it pushes something out elsewhere. And so we've got to bring everybody together and talk with them about whether or not they have a comfort level with this and move forward. And I have the utmost confidence that we're going to be able to get it done.
And is there any specific way that you think you can thread this needle? Because there seems to be such a divergence in viewpoints on this.
Yeah, you just have to continue working with folks and explain why we're recommending inclusion of certain items within the legislation itself. What the rationale is for it, why it helps people out there in the real world, not here in Washington, D.C., why it makes it so that patients and families and doctors would be having more authority in health care as opposed to the federal government, and listening to their concerns and saying if there are things that you believe will assist in making it better, then we're happy to listen to it, understanding that the next step will be in the United States Senate, and we'll go through the same process there. But the tough legislation is tough to do, and then that's where we find ourselves right now, and it feels kind of like other legislation that's been difficult in the past.
All right, sir, thank you for your time. We're going to monitor all of this. I guess there'll be a series of procedural votes tonight starting at 8 Eastern. The Republican conference will meet at 7 Eastern. We'll have a lot more by 10 Eastern when we get on the air tonight, and a scheduled vote, I think, on the entire bill sometime tomorrow morning. Mr. Secretary, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
All right, when we come back, we'll hit the phones toll-free, 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program.
Hannity Headline, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you everywhere you go. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
All right, looks like the healthcare vote moved to tomorrow. We'll see what happens and whether or not we get a consensus bill here or not. All right, let's get to our busy phones. Janice in California. Janice, hey, how are you? And glad you called. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Sean. I wanted to share that, first of all, I'm very proud of the conservative members making a stand, and it sounds like it's down to about 2 points they're holding out for. And they're obviously holding out for their constituents, and they're very brave to do it. I think they're doing it in a very respectful way to the president as well. I'd like to say I think our frustrations need to be pointed to Paul Ryan, and I'd love to see you keep holding his feet to the fire, because he keeps showing that he just wants, he led us to believe there was consensus. There wasn't consensus. He was trying to push it down everyone's throat. The president is the one who seems to be more active in negotiating, which is awesome. But
well, I'll be perfectly blunt with you. I think the president, I think by not building consensus and keeping it secret and not bringing in the differing factions, moderates, conservatives, the study group, the caucus group, I think is then put the president in the position of trying to clean up a mess and not of his own doing. And I think he's trying to the best of his ability. And I think it was an untenable position for him to be put in. That's my own take on this.
Absolutely. And I know I heard him say that he does trust Paul Ryan, but I'm sorry, I don't. He should have brought the people in. He should have allowed these men haven't changed their story and what they're requesting for their constituents and what's best for America. They're very consistent, saying the same things over and over again. So why didn't Paul Ryan listen? Why didn't he bring them in? So I think keep holding his feet to the fire. I loved your last interview with him, and I think we're going to need it going forward. You've been amazing in just this whole process.
Listen, all I'm really trying to do here is get a bill that is going to work on principles that I know work. And the principles are very, very basic and simple. I believe in free market competition, supply and demand, crisscross and dictate price. The supply will increase. For example, if everybody is freed up health care money available to them, then what you're going to have are all of these insurance companies competing for your dollars. And the insurance companies that offer the best deal, the best coverage at the best price are going to be the most successful. You know, the cooperatives that have developed, like in Wichita, Kansas, they're going to be duplicated. You know, young people will get catastrophic plans with a medium to high deductible, and they're covered if they have a heart attack, a bad accident, or, God forbid, get cancer. All right, we'll stay with the phones when we get back, and then we're going to get to the Devin Nunes comments also straight ahead.
We know you never want to miss the Sean Hannity Show. And now you never have to. Just sign up for Hannity Headlines, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you on your laptop, your mobile phone, everywhere you go, even to your liberal in-laws' place in Vermont.
Yeah.
And after a few hours of that, you'll be glad you brought Sean along. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. You know what? Let's get to some calls here. All right, so we're following all of these top stories today. Let me just to reiterate. Number one, the Schumer now has pledged. Let's play we didn't play the cut yet, did we? All right. I've been dealing with a lot behind the scenes today. All right, and I'm trying to get an understanding. I'm working the phones, and I'm talking to every side of this deal, from the Freedom Caucus to the moderates to the friends that I have in the executive branch. And, I'm going to tell you what I really feel, because I feel the president has not been served here well. And it's Paul Ryan's job to get the legislation to the point where it gets passed. He in the House has the responsibility to advance the president's agenda. And he didn't reach out to all the different factions and groups, and now they're at each other's throats, and he left the president to end up cleaning up the mess that should have been dealt with before they rolled this out. That's really what it is. I'm just speaking truth to power here. Now the president is in a horrible position. Anyway, let's go to Chuck Schumer. He's going to filibuster Gorsuch, which, by the way, I'm happy about, and I'll explain.
After careful deliberation, I have concluded that I cannot support Judge Neil Gorsuch's nomination to the Supreme Court. His nomination will have a cloture vote. He will have to earn 60 votes for confirmation. My vote will be no, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. To my Republican friends who think that if Judge Gorsuch fails to reach 60 votes, we ought to change the rules, I say, if this nominee cannot earn 60 votes, a bar met by each of President Obama's nominees and George Bush's last two nominees, the answer isn't to change the rules, it's to change the nominee.
The reason I now believe the nuclear options time has come is, with all of the radical leftists that Republicans being accommodating and trying to be kind and trying to be, get along and play fair and be nice, etc. You know what? They're never going to give reciprocity to Republicans. So what's the point? Just use the nuclear option. Well, they're going to use it too. They already are using it. And Republicans are far too gentle in their fights. What is it? Why are you making faces at the TV that you're looking at right now?
I'm so sorry. Every time I look up today, there's another piece of breaking news, and honest to God, I can't keep up.
Well, what? Okay, well, what just broke that I missed?
We don't know. That's why I'm staring with a blank stare and saying, now what?
Every time you look up, there's a podium with a microphone that they keep going to. So we're like, is there another press conference? Another one?
All right, it doesn't matter. The vote's off. The vote will take place tomorrow. And sometime, I assume, between tonight and tomorrow, that they're going to probably come to some type of consensus and deal. And you know what? If they don't, then they don't. I think there's a way out of this, my own personal opinion. But you know what? Nobody's listened to me from the beginning. The process should have been handled differently from day one. You don't hide legislation in the CBO that people are guessing has bad things in it. And then all of a sudden it comes out and all the bad things that people were warning about is in it. And then you've got to move on from there. And you've got to now the president gets put in the position of being the Speaker of the House and working the phones and defending the legislation. It's not his job to write legislation. It's the principles that he lays out that he's supposed to want in his bill. A 3-step process, 1-step process, no repeal, no replace. It gets, if I'm confused, then the average voter's confused. And it should be understandable. Now, at the end of the day, can we still come up with healthcare savings accounts and cooperatives and repeal Obamacare and get rid of the mandates and all the things that have been wrong? Yeah, of course you can. There's ways to fix it. I'm personally not in any rush here. Maybe that's just my view. I'd rather get it right than rush it through. So let's see what happens. Anyway, 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. All right, let's go to Barbara's in Baltimore, Maryland on WCBM. Hey, Barbara, how are you? Glad you called.
Sean.
Barbara.
I love you, man. I love you. I just love you.
I need a hug today. I'm glad you said that.
I tell you, I'm an insurance agent.
Yes, ma'am.
A 27-year
wow.
veteran insurance agent. But everything you're saying, just stay on it. Stay on it.
I'm staying on it. Listen, I'm all I want here is a system that is rooted in free market, capitalism, and competition. That's all I want.
And guess what? Sean, oh, I love you, man. Oh, and thank you for the pen. I got a pen with my Donald Trump pen. My grandsons just love it. And my 4-year-old grandson, he does a dance. He's got a dance doing too. We'll do that at the end of all this mess one day. I'll bring him up there.
The greatest president that God ever created.
Yeah, anyway. All right, enough of that. Listen, Barbara, you made my day, but you know something? Let's see what we
All they have to do is when they start talking about Nationwide, Allstate, State Farm, Farmers, and all the big insurance companies, you never hear them talk about it, Sean. And you know why? Because they're excluded by the healthcare companies. I've been insurance licensed for 27 years and never wrote a health policy. And the reason is because it's a closed market. And I'm telling you, that's where it's at. And Paul Ryan has been deceitful. Donald Trump doesn't know anything about insurance. All he knows is that he wants this thing to work. They need to open it up. Rand Paul and the Freedom Caucus is on the right track. And all I can say is let's help them to stick to that and open up the markets and watch what happens to health care. It becomes just like car insurance and life insurance.
All right. Thank you, Barbara. You made my day today. 800-941-SEAN. Evelyn is in North Carolina. What's going on, Evelyn? How are you? We're glad you called.
Sean? Oh, I'm really glad to talk to you. Let me tell you, Sean, I am.
By the way, you're in
happy.
North Carolina, but you're from New York. It's very, very
Yes,
obvious. I sound like Linda.
I've been here since '86, but I'm not turning Southern for anything.
No, we hear the way you talk, and you talk very much like a New Yorker. You don't sound like you're from North Carolina.
Well, you know, people say you have an accent. I just go back and say, so do you.
That's very funny. What's going on? What's on your mind today, Evelyn?
Well, let me tell you, Sean, it's such a pleasure to turn on the TV or turn on your show on the way home from work and hear real news, not the fake news, not, just your top of the head remarks. You're factual. And it's such a pleasure. I enjoy your show so much. And I enjoy you. I had the pleasure of seeing you in Fayetteville at,
wow.
President to be Donald Trump.
I remember that. That was a great event. And that was the one with the veteran that was injured, and he was on the stage with us, right?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was just wonderful. You were in another building, and I couldn't find the building. It was quite a walk from the place where...
well, we can't have long walks at your age, for crying out loud. No, listen, I'm just teasing you. Evelyn, you're not what's wrong with this country. You're what makes this country great. God bless you, okay?
Well, let me tell you, Sean, I love your monologues. They're so to the point.
Oh, wait till you hear tonight's. I'm coming out swinging tonight. You don't want to miss tonight.
I'll be listening, but I'll tell you another thing, that I wish they wouldn't come out with this health plan in pieces. Let's get it all together and present it as a bunch, one thing. Because what's going to happen is, the Democrats are going to filibuster each and every point. We'll never get it done.
We'll get it. Listen, there's a way to get it done if they want to get it done. There's a way to solve the problem if we want to solve the problem. I'm not going to question whether or not people negotiate in good faith or not, but in all honesty, Evelyn, I promise you there's a way. All right, but I got to get to other calls. God bless you. I appreciate it. Jeff is in Idaho next. Jeff, how are you? Glad you called.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for taking my call.
What's going on?
Hey, I've been listening to you talk about this negotiation, and you and I have agreed on believing in Trump since day one. I fully believe that he's the only one that's in control right now and is comfortable. He's in the zone. He has got everybody out of the corners and then their secret whatever they've been doing and getting them out negotiating, very hands-on. Trump really is the only one I trust in this negotiating process right now.
I will say this.
Record?
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? The fact that 8 years gone by and they didn't have a consensus bill, that's not Donald Trump's fault. The fact that they laid out a bill that wasn't a consensus bill, that's not Donald Trump's fault. The fact that he has reached out across the aisle, across all aspects of the Republican Party and every coalition and every different group is a credit to him. This is not Donald Trump's fault. And this is
but this is where his true leadership is. He knew that if he was going to get this passed through the swamp, he is going to have to drag these guys through the swamp. Especially Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan has his leadership is no credibility. Their record of getting nothing done for all these years, and then this is why I think. Do you think we'd have anything good if Trump wasn't president today? If it was another one of the candidates that were
listen, I'm only telling you what I know and the facts as I see them, and I'm telling you that this didn't have to be this way. There was a better way to handle this. And that's
I think Trump is playing speaker. I think he's very
well. He's been handed. He was
the previous 8 years.
He's been put in a position that he had to take on that role, and that's not his job. Now it's his job to push for legislation that he really believes in. But I just think in this particular case it was really mishandled. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. All right, I appreciate it. 800-941-SEAN. Larry in Arizona. What's up, Larry? How are you?
Hey, Sean, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
It's funny, I'm sitting here laughing because the previous caller was pretty much stealing my thunder. But, like we said, there's a reason that Congress has such a low rating. And it's because they do stuff and have done stuff like they're doing now. They can't get anything done. Everybody's got their own agenda. And the bottom line is, when all is said and done, the only one that we can trust in this whole thing, and that's why he got to be elected president, is Donald Trump.
Exactly. You know what? And I do put more faith in him. It's funny. I talked to a bunch of Freedom Caucus guys today, and they were very, very clear in that they trust Trump and they don't trust the speaker or the leadership. That's the leadership's problem. The people that they needed to build trust with, they ignored for 3 weeks. So,
and like you said, we've been saying, and you've been saying, and other people have been saying, they've had 8 years to get this right. Well, I also think the Freedom Caucus and all these other people that are objecting to all this stuff, they also had 8 years to make their voices known. And, you got to be ready. And I don't think they were ready even themselves to confront what they're doing. And I think bottom line is that Mr. President is going to have to take every single solitary thing and walk this thing through if he's going to get it done, because they're going to keep playing politics, both sides.
Well, if they do, then they're going to make a mistake, because as a party, as a group, they promised to repeal and replace. But with that said, I would rather wait, and I would rather get it right than have a bill that is not what is in the best interest of the American people. Anyway, I appreciate it. 800-941-SEAN. Real quick, Alan is in Maine. What's up, Alan? How are you?
Thank you so much, Sean. I can't believe I'm talking to you right now.
Yes, sir.
I'm calling from the great state of Maine. I mean, up here we have lighthouses that protect us from hitting the shores, and that's how I consider you, Sean. You're a lighthouse for us. I mean, if it wasn't for you, I mean, those long days at work when I don't even get the news and stuff, I mean, I'd come home, I listen to you. I mean, I'm so sick of the fake news. It's unbelievable. I mean, they want me to believe what they're saying, and every time I turn the news on, all I can hear is the background music to Barnable Bailey Circus. Because I mean, if it wasn't for you guys out there preaching the truth, when the truth needs to be told, I mean, who knows where we would be, Sean? I'm telling you. I mean, just look at how they're playing the Russian deal. I mean, if anybody can believe that, I mean, holy cow! I got some ice up in Alaska, I can tell you. I mean, look at the Israeli election. There's a man that messed an election, Obama, and that burns my grunt so bad right there. It is.
All right, I appreciate it. Listen, but this is like the Be Nice to Hannity hour. Look, my job is to hold them accountable for you. Let's get the bill right. Let's not worry about all this other nonsense. We also have the issue at the top of the next hour of all of the new developments. Devin Nunes actually saying that, yeah, they did surveil the president-elect. They did surveil his transition team. And this is beyond scary, but it's also what we've been telling you now for over 2 weeks happened, and very few people paid attention. Now maybe they'll pay attention.
This is the Sean Hannity Show podcast.
All right, news roundup and information overload hour here on the Sean Hannity Show. Following a bunch of stories today, the aftermath of London. We've got Senate Minority Leader Chuckie Schumer promising to filibuster Neil Gorsuch. No surprise on that. We, of course, are following the health care vote, and we are continuing our coverage of all of these issues, not the least of, I think, one of the most important issues of the day, and that is we talk about Congressman Devin Nunes and what he said.
I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition. Details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value, were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. Third, I have confirmed that additional names of Trump transition team members were unmasked.
From what I know right now, it looks like incidental collection. We don't know exactly how that was picked up, but we're trying to get to the bottom of it. I believe it was all done legally. I think it was all obtained legally. It appears most of this occurred, from what I've seen, in November, December, and January, during the transition. I have seen intelligence reports that clearly show that the president-elect and his team were, I guess, at least monitored and disseminated out in intelligence reporting channels.
Are you saying the surveillance, if it wasn't related to Russia or anything like that, are you saying that it was political surveillance of political opponents, as the president has suggested in his tweets?
What I've read bothers me, and I think it should bother the president himself and his team. Because I think some of it seems to be inappropriate.
Did President Obama order any kind of surveillance of the president, of the president-elect?
We don't know who sent the taskings. If the taskings were changed into what went into these intelligence reports, but we're going to try to find that out.
Can you rule out the possibility that senior Obama administration officials were involved in this?
No, we cannot.
All right, there you hear Devin Nunes. This is blockbuster information. And what did they know? When did they know it? Who knew what, when, and where? And we have more questions today than we have answers. He'll be joining us at the bottom of the hour, the only time he could, in fact, do that. Joining us now on our Newsmaker line, we have three people that have been following these issues very closely. Sarah Carter is the senior editor for Circa.com. She, along with her colleague, John Solomon, have been telling you all of this information for the better part of 2.5 weeks on this program and on my television program. Bill Binney, 32-year veteran at the NSA, whistleblower. He's the one that's been telling us that, in fact, every phone call, every text, every email is, in fact, monitored, metadata, and stored by the government. And he joins us as well as Kirk Wiebe, former senior analyst for the NSA. Sarah, this really, to me, just confirmed what Congressman Nunes said. It really just confirms everything that you and John Solomon have been reporting. Let's pick up from where you started and what he said yesterday and how this all connects.
Well, I remember I was thinking about that the other day, Sean, when I broke my first story on the Department of Justice. And it was about the investigation, and the sources that I spoke with said there is a narrow range of people that can actually access this information, unmask it. That means give permission to unmask this information and disseminate it to intelligence agencies. So I broke that story. John and I continued to break story after story on this regarding the server in Trump Tower, regarding the FBI's investigation into the Russian hacking. We were able to confirm that there was an FBI investigation into Russian hacking and that the server was a separate traditional investigation that was closed down immediately because they didn't find any criminality or any evidence with the server.
But we got to go back. Let me stop you here. Well, not because I want to interrupt you and be rude, but I want to put a fine point on this. When the FBI director, testified earlier this week before the House Intelligence Committee, he acknowledged that this investigation was ongoing and still ongoing. Your reporting has said they found nothing.
That is correct. Up until this date, unless something new comes out later that we had no idea about, but up until this date, according to all the sources that we spoke with, the story was vetted very, very heavily. They had no evidence to date to charge neither Trump or anyone on his team with anything criminal with relation to the Russian hacking.
Okay, so there's no evidence. Now, when you take what what Congressman Nunes says, and he even went further in saying that this bothers him, and I'll know more at the bottom of this half hour. And you put it together with what you have reported and what the FBI director said this week, then I guess my next question to you is, where is this going? Where did these leaks come from? Who knew about the investigation? How much surveillance took place? They might say it's incidental, but in the case of General Flynn, we know that they didn't minimize as the Espionage Act requires, and they leaked it, which the Espionage Act says is a felony punishable up to 5 years in jail.
Yeah, I can tell you that I've been speaking to U.S. officials today, and there are a number of people very concerned. They said if what Nunes revealed is actually fact, and they are able to show that these communications were disseminated with nothing to do with Russia, and it appears to be political, violation of the civil liberties of all Americans. This is probably one of the biggest stories, political stories, since Watergate. And there is going to be, I believe, there needs to be a very deep investigation. A lot of this stuff is classified, Sean. You know, it's very difficult for us to get our hands on that Chairman Nunes may be able to get his hands on. I know for us it's going to be extremely difficult, but according to U.S. officials, I mean, the collection of this incidental information, and I don't even know what that means exactly, has serious repercussions and implications for our personal privacy.
Let me go to Bill Benny. Bill, you've been very outspoken, 32-year NSA veteran, and you're the one that's telling us that all this metadata is being stored on every single person, and you hear what Devin Nunes said, and you hear about, quote, incidentally, that the president-elect and his team, his transition team, were surveilled. What is your reaction?
Well, first let me say that Comey has known about this, quote, incidental collection, which is everything on the fiber lines inside the United States. He's known about it since the hospital visit in 2004. That was all about the Stellar Wind program, which is the domestic spying program, and that's done by the upstream processing of tapping the fiber lines inside the country by the Fairview program, the Storm Brew program, the Blarney program, and several others. But those are the main ones, collecting content and metadata on every U.S. citizen inside the country. And that's what they're going. And then all they have to do, if they want to find something about President Trump, they simply go in and use his data to find out what's in there on him. And they can retroactively analyze it all the way back to at least 2001.
You know, Kirk, let me ask you from this standpoint, if it's incidental, well, that tells me that's almost the exact same thing that happened to General Flynn. And then the general practices that as I understand them, is minimization and no leaking whatsoever. Now we now have to ask, well, okay, why did Devin Nunes said that this was widely dispersed? And in fact, that they were able to identify the individuals, the Americans that were being surveilled as a part of the course of their business of surveilling foreign entities. That, to me, unveiling or unmasking, as we call it, should never have happened. Am I right? Does that then raise the specter of the question why Executive Order 12333 then allowed the sharing with 16 other agencies?
Well, absolutely, Sean, you're spot on. When I look at what Nunes said, when I look at what Sarah and her colleague, Mr. Solomon, are reporting, and I have a few sources myself of ex-Intel people, we're pretty much unanimous in believing that this was purposeful targeting of an American or American citizens, plural, probably for political purposes. And it may have even been the DOJ who weasel-worded a request to FISA to get it theoretically okayed, but hiding behind the legality of FISA when, in fact, it's a corrupt practice when you do that. The point of it is...
So are you saying this is basically a ruse that this, in other words, there was a FISA warrant, as Sarah says, there was a criminal warrant, as Sarah says, but it wasn't specifically against Trump himself, the president-elect himself, but it was into the Russian hacking issue. And as part of that, they got into the Trump Tower servers. And then they're saying now also they had incidental surveillance. In other words, if the president-elect was talking to a foreign leader and they were tapping that foreign leader, that means they were listening in on that call.
Absolutely, Sean. That's what I am saying.
And you're saying this is a ruse. This is just an excuse to spy on the president.
The FISA part.
Wow.
That makes it sound legal. Remember when Nunez said this was legal? That gives it that legal stamp. But when you find the motivation for it, and what did they say to FISA? Did they misrepresent the facts? That is what is key here. Now, some analyst, and let me clarify incidental collection. It's really important to understand. It makes it sound though it's accidental. Do not make that substitution in words in your mind. There is no incidental collection if you think collection is the gathering of data off the internet, the fiber optic lines. It's all done purposefully, and they get it all. What they are calling incidental is when a human being listens to the targeted data, in this case probably a foreigner, and the opposite end of that communication, email or phone call, is an American. Mm-hmm. They're calling that incidental, that it's somehow built in, and the analyst doesn't really want to listen to that American citizen, but they can. But when they do that and they want to make it an official record, such as a transcript or a report, they must get authorization from FISA to do it.
All right, stay right there, all of you. We'll get reaction from Sarah Carter, Bill Binney when we get back. Also, we include Kirk Wiebe.
Hannity Headline, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you everywhere you go. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
All right, as we continue, the big bombshell that was released by the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes yesterday. We continue with Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, both worked for the NSA for many, many years. Sarah Carter with Circa.com has been ahead of this. All right. Do you agree with what Bill and Kurt are saying, that in many ways this really wasn't about them doing surveillance or incidental surveillance, and it just so happened that they picked up the president-elect's calls and the transition team's calls? You don't agree with that, do you, Sarah?
No. I mean, I think that in a sense that when you're looking at this, they talk about it being legal surveillance activities. Okay, the surveillance activities, the FISA was put in on Russia, those are legal. But as we heard from Chairman Nunes, this went far beyond Russia. This went far beyond even the illegal leaking and exposure of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's name to the public. I mean, there is a lot of information floating around out there, and Chairman Nunes said that's why he felt compelled to go to the president, because he's like, wait, we're seeing reports here of communications between not only the president, but people around the president, surrounding the president from November through January that are out there in intelligence reports that are accessible to the possibility of a lot of people and the possibility of leaks. And this goes far beyond the scope of what I think he's suggesting was the intention of the information. And somebody needs to answer to this. I mean, what I'm hearing from the intelligence community, from members of the intelligence community, is that they are being dragged into a political haystorm. There are people within the intelligence community that want to be able to do their jobs. They want to be able to do the right thing. And now they are going to be targeted by the American public because they're going to be looking like they're partisan or like they're working against our own government. And I think there needs to be some clarity here, so not only we could unmask this, who was responsible for this, but also maybe alleviate a little bit of what the intelligence community is feeling right now.
I think that's a great observation. But there are those clearly within the intelligence community. Whoever gave this to Devin Nunes, Sarah, wanted him to know that there are good people in the intelligence community that do not like what has been happening.
Absolutely, and this is the reason why John and I were able to do these stories the last several weeks. I mean, there are people within law enforcement and within the intelligence community that want to get the truth out there. They want this to stop. I mean, this is a violation of, constitutional and civil rights if it appears this way. People's names being unmasked, Americans' names being unmasked, government officials, the possibility that this has all been politicized, but in such a way that it's not just like using a political idea that's out there or talking about a political option, something that's out in the public. This is about going into very highly classified communications records and using it against opponents, if that ends up being the case. And whoever has decided to leak these documents, I mean, I believe that they might be the answer to all of it.
Wow. Bill Binney, last word.
Well, first of all of this minimization process, none of the data in NSA databases is minimized. It only gets minimized when somebody makes a query into it if they're an NSA analyst. For example, with FBI and CIA, there's no minimization process that I know of that goes on there. So that and the numbers of people who are involved in looking at it are all the system administrators and all the programmers at NSA. I mean, that must be several thousand people.
All right,
So,
I'm gonna have to run. You guys are amazing, all of you, and we'll have a lot more on this tonight on Hannity, 10 Eastern on the Fox News Channel. Thank you, Bill Binney. You've been a rock star. Kirk, you're incredible. Your analysis is dead on. Thank you all for being with us. Quick break. Right back. We'll continue.
We know you never want to miss the Sean Hannity Show. And now you never have to. Just sign up for Hannity Headlines, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you on your laptop, your mobile phone, everywhere you go, even to your liberal in-laws' place in Vermont.
Yeah.
And after a few hours of that, you'll be glad you brought Sean along. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com. Holding them accountable. Sean gets the answers no one else does. America deserves to know the truth about Congress.
All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. Toll free. Our telephone number is 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of this extravaganza. All right, let's get to our busy phones. Look, so much happening today. The aftermath of the London bombing, which we have been mentioning. You know what? You know what's sad? These events happen. We talk about them. It's a big news story. And then we move on the next day, and it's like, okay, we forgot it already. You know, I really fear, I said this to Linda earlier today, I really fear it's going to take another 9/11 to really awaken people. I just, think about this. You had all these people killed. I think the final tally was 5 killed yesterday. Over 40 people severely injured. This is one guy, no bomb, no acid, no biological weapons, no, nothing major. An 8-inch knife. And look at the wreckage and the damage and the headlines. We're all outraged, rightly so. We pray for the victims and their families. And then the next day, oh, it's just another radical Islamist. So, this is not the way it has to be. The way it needs to be is that we are safe and secure in our own country. And if we don't learn from the Islamization of Europe, that means France and Germany and Belgium and Great Britain and all throughout Europe, then we're destined to have the same problems existing here, which, by the way, already exist here. I remember Bibi Netanyahu would always say, well, Israel's viewed as the little Satan. It's America, the big Satan, that they really want to be at war with. And coming to a theater near you. That's how Prime Minister Netanyahu once ended an interview with me. Coming to a theater near you.
This is a danger I've been pointing to. It's not a spin. It's not a whim. It is a clinical diagnosis of a pathological movement that is sweeping our area but will soon come to a theater near you. It has to be stopped now.
All right, let's get to our busy telephones here as we say hi to, is it Charlotte is in Oregon? Charlotte, how are you? Glad you called.
Yes, hello, Sean. Thank you for taking my call. On Tuesday, I heard Ann Coulter on your program talking about the different Christian healthcare ministries. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so I just wanted to let you know that in 2011, my husband and I joined one of those and had not needed to use it. And about a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I'm just 2 months out of all my treatments now. Every cent of it was paid for. The great thing, no pre-authorization was needed because it's not traditional insurance. So I was able to have my surgery immediately. My first treatment was 2 days after seeing the doctor. That's really important for cancer patients or people with life-threatening things to be able to get prompt medical attention. And I am so glad that that's what I have for insurance.
Well, I can tell you that all of these cooperatives like Atlas MD in Wichita, Kansas, and Dr. Umber, and you're right, Christian Healthcare, other cooperatives, they seem to be working the best. Now, as I understand it, we were asking the Health and Human Services Secretary earlier in the program today, all right, does this legislation allow for all of these new paradigms? And his answer is absolutely, positively yes. Part of going the free market route, which is what we conservatives have been saying from the beginning, the great blessing of it is all of these new models then begin to pop up and exist. And they cater to individual communities. They cater to individual needs. They allow the powers of groups to buy at reduced rates and negotiate more care for less money than they otherwise would get. And that's the blessing of the free market. And you're, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't have to worry about that part of it at all.
Yeah. All right. Good for you. And I think a lot of that's going to come out of it. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Charlotte. 800-941-SEAN. Justin is in North Carolina. What's up, Justin? How are you?
Hi. My name is Justin. I'm in North Dakota, and it's an honor to speak with Mr. Hannity. I believe that if they were to have the healthcare providers show a basic list of costs, it could totally change the system around.
So what's the matter? Are you on a treadmill? You running up a stairs? What are you doing here?
Yeah. I'm working. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's all right. No worries. I used to call talk radio shows when I was working too. All right. Well, so say it again.
Okay. I believe that if they are to have the healthcare providers show a basic list of their costs for services, that it would revolutionize the industry because they'd be forced to make their money in volume, and so their systems would be streamlined, which since costs would be lowered, more people would come in, and that combined with the policies of the good doctor that was on yesterday, I believe would do a great deal for the healthcare industry.
Yeah, look, I think you're making a lot. I hear what you're saying. Look, you're cracking me up, though, because you're reminding me. I used to call radio shows from 40 feet up in the air on a ladder, hanging from the ladder, and it was ridiculous. I say, hang on, I'm on a ladder here. Whoa, hang on, I'll be right there. Look, I'm going to repeat what I said to the last caller, and that is that new free market capitalism works. What does capitalism do? You have supply and demand, you crisscross, and it dictates the price. Okay, everybody needs health care, so there's a big demand for health care. All right, then you have health care providers. When you have free markets and you don't have mandates and you don't have government top-down plans that you have to choose from, well, then that means you're going to pick the plan that best works for you. If it's a local community cooperative and it's, whatever it happens to be. If I'm a young person, I'm getting catastrophic insurance that allows me to get one checkup a year. And then if I have a heart attack, get in a bad accident, or if I get cancer, God forbid, I'm covered. That's insurance. Okay. But if you want, if you need stitches, you may have to pay that out of pocket. But if you're part of a co-op like Dr. Umber's Atlas MD, then that's all covered. You have unlimited care. Does that make sense?
Never have to. Yeah, but if the healthcare industry never has to illuminate what they're going to charge you beforehand, how can they work the system from a basic cost point of view? I don't know.
All right, I appreciate the call, Justin. Thank you. 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program. All right, Kate is in Houston, Texas, KTRH. Hey, Kate, how are you? And welcome to our friends from Houston. What's happening?
Hey, Sean. So I got two things. One not so serious, like really brief, and then one very serious about yesterday's bombshell. What do you want?
Whatever you.
Which one?
I'll let you choose. I'm not going to pick the topic. You get to call and say what you want.
Okay. So the first one, I'm going to make fun of you. The funny thing, I'm going to kind of make fun of you just a little bit, but then I want to talk about the serious thing. You know the lady that called in on your show about your tie and how it's always a little bit to the right?
Right. Yeah, I remember that on my TV show on the Hannity Hotline. Yeah.
I know. It's true. I got to tell you, it's always a little to the right. I didn't want to believe her, but like every time now I just want to scoot it over a little to the left.
Listen,
But,
maybe it's
okay.
me. I spend 30 seconds getting makeup on every night, and I comb my own hair, and somebody sprays it so it doesn't move.
But you're a cutie. You're a cutie. I mean, it's
Oh,
not
boy.
about the tie, but I'm just saying. Okay,
All
all right. Let me get serious. So this Nunes bombshell yesterday. Unbelievable, right?
Yep.
Unbelievable.
It's massive.
What I love about it is that to me, it only proves this whole entire deep state situation that we've gotten going on. I mean, props to you. You've been way ahead of the game. You, Sarah Carter, John, always putting them out there. To me, it proves it. Here's Nunes. He sees something so incredible that he has to run straight to the president. Then he comes out, it's inappropriate. That's the word that he says, right? Which to me only can connotate that there's some type of subterfuge going on. And that's all I see. It's got nothing to do with Russia. There is no Russia story. You've only proven that over and over again.
Right.
And then we've got Adam Schiff, who drives me crazy. I mean, I can barely watch the guy. It's like, honestly, like a fly that's swatting, or I just want to swat him. He just kind of, saying the same crap every time, gets out there and publicly says and condemns him. Well, he's come out, and this now means that we can't have an investigation that's fair. Well, he's doing the exact same thing. He ran to the microphone in the exact same way, saying, well, he's inappropriate and he hasn't shown us this information. Well, why do you think that he didn't show him the information?
Such a good point. Of course. Listen, I think what's going to happen is, as I've been predicting, I think all this information is going to be accumulated. We're going to learn more and more how political all of this Russia stuff is. And what we're going to learn is that there are highly sourced, top-level Obama holdover sympathizing, agenda sympathizing ideologues that are purposely trying to hurt the current president. That's where this is going to end. There's also, I suggest to you too, this is going to end with people going to jail for violating the law and leaking intelligence information. There's going to be prosecutions at the end of this. I also believe there's going to be political connections to all of this. And I think it's going to go very high up in the intelligence community. I personally do not believe it's the rank and file intelligence officer that works hard every day to protect our country that is involved in this. We'll find out how high up the deep state goes. And at the end of the day, if it is what I think it is, this may be the biggest scandal in American history when it's all said and done. It has the potential, I can tell you that. All right, Christy is in Mobile in Alabama. Christy, hi, how are you? And we're glad you called.
Hi, how are you doing, Sean?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Actually, what I feel is the whole Russia collusion is just smoke and mirrors on behalf of the Democrats. You know, the old saying of when you're pointing your finger at someone, you have three more pointing back at you. We really need to find out what those other three fingers are pointing back at. What is it they're trying to cover up by continually yelling, oh, it's collusion with Russia on behalf of Trump?
Well, there's no evidence of it. James Clapper said it. This week we had Admiral Rogers say it, and we had James Comey say it. So, you know, the fact that the media fixates, focuses, and is obsessed with it, well, they're just advancing their agenda.
Exactly, and that's a problem that I've had with some of my liberal and Democratic friends. All they watch is CNN, MSNBC, and Fox is the devil in their view. It's constantly, oh, well, you know, he must be colluding with Russia or they wouldn't continue to investigate. But for me, it's as if the Democrats are trying to cover up other issues that they have by saying Russia, Trump is colluding with Russia, and pulling back, you know, from 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, you know, Manafort worked for a company in Russia. It's a constant bash of, you know, let's talk about Russia. And it's never, you know, well, the Democrats have been doing things with Russia, the Iranian deal, and so on and so forth. It's never, let's look at what's happened with the Democratic side. It's constantly, well, Trump must be getting something out of Putin in order to have won the election.
You know what the funny thing is? When you talk to Trump, he'll tell you he's never talked to Putin. Never.
Right.
He's never had a conversation with the guy. So why is that even an issue? Anyway, good call. Appreciate it. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of this extravaganza. Back to our phones. Kim in New Orleans. Kim, how are you? Glad you called.
Great, Sean. How are you?
I'm good. What's happening? Busy day, I'll tell you.
Very busy. I'm kind of mad at Trump for not taking the prime opportunity to call out the New York Times et al. For being fake news after he tweeted, after he tweeted about being surveilled, and they all screamed, "You have no proof, you have no proof." He could have just turned around and said, "Wait a minute, you're the ones who said I was wiretapped."
Well, actually, he has said that, but but they, of course, they're not going to look. If it ends up on page A1, Trump wiretapped on January 20th. If they ever did a correction, which is not going to happen, why would they ever do that? Because again, they're basically state-run propaganda media. They are the opposition. If they ever did have a correction of any kind, it's going to be buried page 838, bottom left, and small print, and it'll be 3 words.
Oh, they won't do a correction, but he just could have said, "So you're saying you're the fake news because you're the ones who reported it. You are my source."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. All right, good call. Appreciate it. Kim, you have a great day. What a crazy day this is. All right, so healthcare vote scheduled for tonight. We'll know more on Hannity 10 Eastern on the Fox News Channel. We will have more on Devin Nunes. He will join us on TV tonight, and you don't want to miss that exclusive interview.
This